What is good, YouTube? Quinn Wade coming to y'all with that rundown analysis on the entire NBA season. And I'm going to tell you what I think about every single team from the top to the bottom of the East and the West, and give y'all some quick analysis on each team and how their season ended up going now that the season is over. Detroit finished number two behind finished number three behind the Thunder and the Spurs when it comes to record. They was able to win 60 games, which is a really, really strong season from them. Really impressive. Nobody really seen that happening or that coming from the Pistons and the Spurs, but they made it happen. They defended well. They ended up winning without K. They ended up playing at a high level. They ended up getting a lot of success throughout this entire year, and they still was able to hold it down all season, no matter who was available, who was on the roster. They just was able to get it done. But other than that, the Pistons won 60 games. They ended up losing 22 games, and they had a 73 win percentage. They at the top of the Eastern Conference basically all year. They was able to get it and keep it. They went 31-9 at home, 28-13 on the road, 12-4 in the division, and 39-13 in the conference. And they had a plus 8.2 point differential. And then they also won three in a row to finish the season. And they also went 8-2 in their last 10. Just one of the best teams all year defensively. They knew what their identity was offensively. K played at an MVP level. Duran played at an All-Star level, and their role players stepped up throughout the entire season on both ends of the court. And that just the reason why they was as great as they were this year. The Celtics, one of the other surprise teams, they won 56 games and had 26 losses. They had a 68 win percentage. They had a record that was really good, but they was 4 games behind the Pistons. They went 30-11 at home and 26-15 on the road, 10-6 in the division, 36-16 in the conference. They had a plus 7.7 point differential, and they won their last 2 games. And they finished also 8-2 in their last 10. Their defense was there. Jaylen Brown played at an MVP level, really scored the ball well, really took over games, really carried them when he could, showed his passing. Jason Tatum came back, showed that he can be a 20-10 guy that can get everybody involved while still getting his shot. Peyton Pritchard came off the bench and really gave them good scoring and good clutch performances. Derek White was a solid defender for them. They had great role players like Kada and Shireman that stepped up. Hugo Gonzalez was a solid rookie for them. I mean, so many things went right for them. They was well coached. They was well prepared. And they just went out there and played hard and tried to win as many games as they could. And they ended up proving everybody wrong. And they ended up looking, like a team that can compete for a title this season. And that's something that most people didn't see or thought would happen. But they ended up making it come true by putting in the hard work and challenging themselves every day to be great, and that's what they ended up being this season. The New York Knicks, they finished with 53 wins and 29 losses. They had a 64 win percentage. They're 7 games behind the Pistons for the number one seed. They went 30-10 at home and 22-19 on the road, 14-3 in the division, 35-17 in the conference. And then they had a plus 6.4 win percentage, point differential. And then they lost their last game and they finished 6-4 in their last 10. It was an up and down season for the Knicks. One minute they look like they can come out the East, another minute they look like anybody can beat them. But they still show that they one of the better teams constructed in the league, and if they can get their heads right and play right, they can easily get to the conference finals again, depending on the matchups and depending how they choose to play and how they choose to step up in those moments and in those situations throughout the playoffs. So they still have the talent of a team that can get to the conference finals. They still have to be responsible. They still have to be accountable. They still have to play to the high level that we know that they can. And if they do that, they had a good season. They can have a good playoffs, but we just don't know because they've been a team that's been hot and cold throughout the season. Cleveland Cavaliers, 52 wins, 30 losses. They ended up having a 63 win percentage, and they had finished 8 games behind the Pistons, 27-14 at home, 25-16 on the road, 11-5 in the division, 33-19 in the conference. They had a plus 4.1 differential. They won their last game, so they finished 7-3 in their last 10. James Harden was a new addition. He fits well with the team. He helps them get another ball handler, another playmaker, and a guy that can make other teammates' jobs easier. Donovan Mitchell, one of the best scorers in the league. They have a good front court with Jared Allen and Evan Mobley, good supporting cast that can attack the basket, handle the ball, and knock down threes on the perimeter. They have everything you need to be a competitive team. I mean, they won 50 games. That's proof of that. They just have to continue to play at a high level through the playoffs, and they just going to have to rely on good shot making too, with a little bit of good decision making in there. And we have to see if Evan Mobley can be a great defender and a great offensive player in the playoffs, because they're going to really need him to bring his A game in along with Donovan Mitchell and James Harden, constructing things and making sure things go the way that they plan on the offensive end, and also being able to step things up defensively when it's crunch time is what they're going to have to do if they're going to make a deep playoff push. But their regular season was ending up being a good one again. 50 wins is always a positive thing. If you can get that done before the season is over, it means that you're one of the better teams in either conference, and they was able to achieve that. Toronto Raptors, 46-36. They ended up having a 56 win percentage. They 14 games behind the Pistons. They're 24-17 at home, 22-19 on the road, 5-12 in the division, 33-19 in the conference, just like the Cavaliers. But they was a plus 2.8 in differential. They had won their last game. They finished 6-4. They showed that they're a good team. Obviously they have a lot of great perimeter players. They have a lot of guys that can hit shots. They have a lot of guys that can do it on multiple levels of scoring, and they still have a little bit of playmaking and also ball creation ability. So they have a lot of things going for them. They're going to be a tough out. Obviously, they're going to compete. They're going to make things tough. They have guys that can take over games. So it's not going to be easy beating them. But their regular season was one where they look good. Sometimes they look great, but also they look okay, especially on the offensive and defensive end sometimes. And that's why they did not have the greatest season, but they also didn't have the worst. Atlanta Hawks played a season where they was one of the teams that was below 500. They fought their way to be above 500 by the end of the season, and they ended up being a respectable team that changed a lot of their pieces throughout the season and still was able to win games. In doing so, they also had a 46-36 record, just like the Raptors. They also 14 games behind the Pistons. They're 24-17 at home. They're 22-19 on the road, but they went 9-7 in their division and 27-25 in their conference. But they still ended with a plus 2.5 differential, and they lost their last game, and they still finished 6-4 in their last 10. They had some good guys that really performed above their head, like Nikhil. They had good defensive plays by and stances by Dyson Daniels. They took a gamble on Oyeka as a starting big. Jalen Johnson showed that he was an all-star last year if he didn't get hurt, but he proved that he was for sure this year. CJ McCollum was a good gamble. He gave them another scorer and another ball handler. And then they had good production from guys off their bench. And then it was just about, can they keep the wins coming and going? And they was able to pick it up at the right time and get it going, because they was able to lock themselves in to a top 6 spot in the Eastern Conference before the season was over. And then the Sixers, they fell out of the top 6. They ended up winning 45 games and had 37 losses. And then they had a win percentage of 54%, 15 games behind the Pistons for the number 1 seed, 23-18 at home, 22-19 on the road, 9-7 in the division, 27-25 in the conference. There was a minus 0.2 in differential. They won their last 2 games, and they finished 6-4 in their last 10. Joel Embiid has been a problem for them. Can't stay healthy. He's always getting surgeries, which is unfortunate because they invested a lot of money in him. They felt that he can still dominate the game, and he just hasn't been able to stay on the court for them. Other than that, Maxey stepped up and had a really good season. And then you look at Paul George, he started getting it right at the right time. And this is the time you need him to play at his best. And then Kelly Oubre really stepped up and gave him interior scoring and good shots from three. Quentin Grimes was really good for them too throughout the season. And they had some good players like Dominic Barlow and Andre Drummond that really came and competed when they was out there on the court. So they had a lot of things going for them. They had a lot of things that kept them going when it came to win, and they never gave up on their season. But they found themselves in a play-in because of injuries and guys not being able to stay on the court for a long period of time for them to play at a high level. The Magic had a lot of injuries as well, but they never really came, in the season and dominated or looked it great. They always looked it good throughout the season, and they never looked it better than that. Most of it. They also finished with a 45-37 win-loss record. They also finished with 54%. 54 win percentage. They also 15 games behind the Pistons, and then they had a 25-15 home record, and a 19-20 road record, and a 9-8 division record, and a 26-26 conference record. But they finished as a plus 0.6 in differential, and they lost their last game, but they still finished 7-3, which is good. And they're gonna need to have that type of mentality going against Philly for the play-in if they want to get a chance at the Celtics. But the Pistons and the Celtics are both going to be tough. But they ended up losing enough games and got themselves in this situation. They just got to find a way to get out. But they still had an above average season, so you got to be happy with that. If you're a Magic fan and then you look at the Charlotte Hornets, they played a really good game and played well the last couple months. The problem was the beginning of the season for them. But other than that, they ended it the right way. They finished 44-38. The 53 win percentage. They had 16 games. They're 16 games behind the Pistons. 21-20 at home. 23-18 on the road. 11-5 in the division. 26-26 in the conference. They had a plus 4.8 in differential. Won their last game. It was 6-4. In their last 10, finished the season above 500, and also did that by competing against some of the tougher teams too, showing that they should be in that conversation as one of the more improved teams throughout the season. One of the better teams is what they ended up being since they have finished a couple games above 500. They got their season right at the right time. Can they continue to play their way into the playoffs for the first time in years and try to go out with a bang? Miami Heat, 43-39, and they ended up having a 52 win percentage, 17 games behind the Pistons, 26-15 at home, 17-24 on the road, 10-7 in the division, 27-25 in the conference, plus 2.4 in differential. Won their last two. They was 5-5 in their last 10. The Heat, they have been a team that had a lot of guys in and out of the lineup. They still found ways to win games. They still found ways to have moments this season, and they still have guys that can really defend and score and make things tough. They do have Powell. They do have Tyler. They do have Bam. They have Khalil. They have Davion Mitchell. They have Jaime Jaquez. So they have talent. They have guys that can get it done. That's why they ended up having a record above 500. But they also disappointed because people thought that they should be even better, but they never could really get it going, never could really make it happen at a consistent level. So they find themselves in the play-in tournament, but looks like a team that ain't gonna make the playoffs this year, which is a disappointment because they should have, especially because most of their guys was healthy. Look at the Bucks; they find themselves out of the playoffs in the play-in. 32 wins, 50 losses. They ended up being 28 games behind the Pistons. They 19-22 in the home record, and then 13-28 with their road record. 9-7 in the division, 21-31 in the conference, a minus 6.2 in point differential, in differential, and they lost their last game and they finished 3-7. In the last 10, they fired their coach. Giannis is having problems because he couldn't play. He couldn't get on a basketball court. He was supposed to be healthy. The team was trying to throw games and lose them. They ended up amnestying Dame, so they had to rely on other guys to step up. And guys like Ryan Rollins did play well. Bobby Portis was good for him. Miles Turner was solid when it came to defense. Kyle Kuzma was a bucket for him. And then they had other guys that played their roles to try to help them win by doing the best they could in those roles. But it just wasn't enough for them to have a playoff caliber season. Injuries to their best player kept them struggling to get wins and stay in games and be able to close them out. So their season was a disaster, and it can be like that for any team, and it was like that for the Bucks. And then the Bulls chose to get rid of a lot of their players before the season was over. So it made sense for them to just throw away their season at that point. We're not that good to win. We're not that good to really be a playoff team. So they're just going a different direction is what they chose to do. They finished 31-51, and they had a 37 win percentage. They played a good couple games throughout the season. Then they just said, let's punt on it. 29 games behind the Pistons, 18-23 at home, 13-23 on the road, 4-12 in the division, 19-32 in the conference. There was a minus 5.2 in differential. They lost their last two and finished 2-8 in the last 10. They really struggled to win games the last couple months. And then the Nets, they just said, we got some guys that's banged up. Let's rest them since our season is basically over within the first 2-3 months of the season. So they just went back to trying to get the best players they can through the draft and free agency and figure everything out in the future. But they still finished with 20 wins, 62 losses. They have a 24 win percentage. They have 40 games that they was behind the Pistons on, 12-29 at home, 8-33 on the road, 3-13 in the division, 14-37 in the conference, a minus 10 in differential. They lost their last three and was 3-7 in their last 10. The Pacers, they traded Benedict to get a big. They can go with Pascal. Hopefully Tyrese is going to be good next year. He's playing 5-on-5 again. His confidence is there. He wants to get back on the court at the NBA level. Hopefully he takes his time and continues to work on his body, continues to work on just getting familiar with playing again and being himself on the court. Other than that, they have a lot of guys that tried to play. They tried to win games. It just didn't happen. It just couldn't get done. They kept being in games, couldn't close them, couldn't get stops. And then it just got too far away from them. So it was just smart for them to just say, we're done this year. We dug ourselves in holes. It was too difficult for us to win games. And we just had to accept that because they ended up having 19 wins and 63 losses. And it was a team that had a 23 win percentage, 41 games behind the Pistons, 11-30 at home, 8-33 on the road, 4-12 in the division, 15-37 in the conference. There was a minus 8.0 in differential. They lost their last two and were 3-7 in the last 10. And then the Wizards, no Trae Young. We'll let you play, but we don't want you to get too happy. We don't want Anthony Davis to play at all. Alexandre Sarr, we'll just sit him too. And they ended up getting the worst record in the East with 17 wins and 65 losses. Three teams ended up losing 60 games. They had a 20 win percentage, 43 games behind the Pistons, 11-30 at home, 6-35 on the road, 2-14 in the division, 11-41 in the conference, a minus 12 in differential, and they did lose their last 10, finishing 0-10 in the last 10 games that they played. And then you look at the Western Conference, the Oklahoma City Thunder, 64 wins and 18 losses, led the entire team when it comes to record and win percentage, 78 win percentage. They was the number one team in the NBA for both conferences. 34 wins at home, 30-10 on the road, 12-4 in their division, 41-11 in their conference, plus 11 in point differential, and they lost their last two, and they finished the season 7-3. It didn't matter. Their best players didn't play in those last couple games. They still was able to hold on to the best record. Shea dominated and played like an MVP, scored 20 plus every single game, was able to get the shots he wanted, was able to take over when he wanted. Defense was still there. They looked deeper. They look like they have a better fit. They still showing you that they would prefer to be healthy over anything else, to have a chance to have another run at winning a championship. Ended the season a way that you like, because they was able to lock up the first seed and say, let's just rest and get ready to try to get this run in. Other than that, they had a great season on both ends of the court and dominated the NBA again. Even though they had some rough patches here and there, they showed that they can still stay together and figure out a way to get it done at a high level. And they ended up locking up the number one seed again. San Antonio Spurs 62-20. Nobody thought they'd be this good, but people thought that they'd possibly be a playoff team. They was able to get that done. They got deeper. Victor got better. The role players around them got better. And they started fitting better. They started stepping up. They started defending better. And then they just became one of the best teams in the league. 62-20, 75 win percentage. 2 games behind the Thunder for the number one overall record in the NBA. 32-8 at home, 29-12 on the road, 13-3 in the division, 36-16 in the conference. A plus 8.3 differential. They lost their last game, but they still finished 8-2. Just a fantastic season from the Spurs. They was one of the best teams all year, one of the funnest teams to watch. You never knew what they was going to do, but you knew they was going to show up and play hard and try to execute at a high level throughout the entire game, whoever they played against. At the Denver Nuggets, they had a lot of injuries to a lot of their wings. They had a lot of injuries to Jamal Murray and Jokic, but as a team, they still was tough to beat. And they finished with 54 wins and 28 losses. Their defense was problems that they was trying to solve and trying to figure out with the personnel that they have. But other than that, they still was a tough team to stop offensively, and Jokic had another dominant season. Murray had his best season. The complementary players played well around him, even though they was a little beat up and tore up throughout the season. They got healthy at the right time. Now they got to stay healthy to have another chance at possibly winning a championship and making a deep playoff run. But when it comes to the regular season, they won 12 in a row to end the season, and they won their last 10 straight in their last 10. Because of that, they still show you that they're a threat to possibly being a team that can win it all. 54 wins, 28 losses, 65 win percentage. They had finished 10 games behind the Thunder, 28-13 at home, 26-15 on the road, 11-5 in the conference, 36-16. 11-5 in the division, 36-16 in the conference, plus 5.2 differential. And like I said, they won their last one at 12-1, 10 in a row because of that. And then the Los Angeles Lakers, yeah, they lost Luka, yeah, they lost Reeves, but they still won their last 3 games and finished 7-3 in the last 10 games. They did have some games that they should have won and still should have got done. They still do have talent. They still have one of the better rosters. They showed that by winning 53 games and having 29 losses. But the problem with them is that their best players are going to be out against the better teams, which is the playoff teams. And that's the wrong time to have your best players out. But other than that, they had a good season offensively. They had a good season of beating teams that they should have. And that helped their record still look good at the end of the day. They had finished 11 games behind the Thunder, 28-13 at home, 25-16 on the road, 10-7 in the division, 33-19 in the conference, plus 1.7 in differential. Won their last 3 and finished 7-3 in their last 10. The Houston Rockets, they finished 52-30. You know, they had an up and down season, but they was able to still be one of the better ones in the entire league. Kevin Durant was really a good fit for them. Şengün and him got along. The role players developed and became better than they were in the previous seasons. and their bench was good. Obviously, they would have loved to have Adams. They would have loved to have Fred VanVleet, but they still showed you that they was one of the better teams in the league even without them. And they didn't make excuses. They just kept competing with what they had, like the other teams did too. And they was able to still win a lot of games. 52-30 is their record. 63% win percentage. 12 games behind the Thunder. 30-11 at home. 22-19 on the road. 10-6 in the division. 29-23 in the conference. Plus 5.2 differential. Won their last game, and they finished 9-1 in their last 10. Really, really good ending to their season, and we'll see if they can keep it up in the playoffs. And then the Minnesota Timberwolves, they did not win 50, but they did win their last two. But the problem was they finished 5-5 in their last 10. Didn't have Anthony Edwards, so that was a reason why. But they still did show that they're a team that you have to prepare for. You have to be ready for, because they still have a lot of talent, and they still have a lot of guys that can get hot and step up. So you have to defend them and be prepared for Anthony Edwards to still try to take over a game and try to close it and be a superstar too. And he did have a decent supporting cast around him. 59 win percentage for them, 15 games behind the Thunder, 26-15 at home, 23-18 on the road, 9-7 in the division, 31-21 in the conference. Plus 3.4 in differential. They won their last two and was 5-5 in the last 10. Like I said before, the Suns, they was around the whole season in the seventh spot. They couldn't really get no higher or no lower. Even with all the injuries that they sustained, they still was able to finish above 500 in a tough Western Conference. And a lot of people say, well, if you have that type of talent, you shouldn't be able to get that done. Well, Jordan Otten and Devin Booker and these guys was able to figure it out on defense and on offense to be respectable. 45-37 was their record. 54 win percentage. 19 games behind the Thunder. 25-16 at home. 20-21 on the road. 10-7 in the division. 29-23 in the conference. A plus 1.5 in differential. Won their last game. They also went 5-5 in their last 10. They were just a good team all year, and that's all they really had to be. Now we're just going to see if they make the playoffs, and that'd be all worth it for them. Although they ain't going to win a championship, they did perform better than a lot of people expected. The Blazers did too. They was always hovering around 500. Then they was able to finish above 500 with a 42-40 record, and then they had a 51% when it comes to win percentage. They was 22 games behind the Thunder. 24-17 at home, 18-23 on the road, 7-9 in the division, 29-23 in the conference. They was a minus 0.3 in differential. They won their last two, and they finished 7-3 in their last 10. They had their better perimeter defenders healthy at the end of the season. They had good size. They had good shot making. They really becoming a team that can do a lot of things on both ends of the court, and that helped them be able to win, a good amount of games. And then the Clippers, 6-21 to 42-40 by the end of the year, the only team to be able to do that in NBA history. And they ended up having a good season, but the problem was they finished ninth, which means they might not make the playoffs, and that'd be all of a waste if they didn't do that. And they did also have a 51 win percentage. They had 22 games behind the Thunder also. 23-18 at home, 19-22 on the road, 10-6 in the division, 25-27 in the conference, plus 1.2 in differential. They won their last game and finished 6-4 in their last 10, being above 500 team. But like I said, they have a lot of new pieces. They have a lot of young guys that are stepping up. You're not going to know what you're going to get out of them game to game, but you know they can have a good impact on it. And you know that Kawhi Leonard is one of the best players in the league, still on both ends of the court. And he can close games and take over games whenever he feels like it still. So they're still going to be a tough team to beat. They're still going to be a tough out even in the play-in game. But, that's what they signed up for. That's what they ended up doing. And they should still be a team that you have to watch out for, even in the playoffs. But they should be able to still compete at a high level. But they also gonna look at like, well, we finished above 500. Well, we finished as a playoff team, but we still far away from being the championship team. is the way you do have to look at it too. And the Warriors, they hung in there and finished 10th, 37-45. They finished way below 500. 45 win percentage, 27 games behind the Thunder for the number one spot. 22-19 at home, 15-26 on the road, 7-9 in the division, 24-28 in the conference. There was a minus 0.6 in the differential. They lost their last three and finished 3-7 in their last 10. They just couldn't win anything. It seemed like they couldn't get enough offense. They couldn't play good enough defense. Even when Steph came back, he made it tougher for them to be beaten, but they still did get beat more times than not. And that's just not the way the Warriors have been respected and been known to play. But this is where they're at now. And you just have to accept that and just try to look at the fact that they still have a chance to make the playoffs, make the best out of it, and try to get better next season and figure out how to win with Steph again, even though it's getting tougher and tougher and harder for him to do that in Golden State. But they didn't give up hope last year, so they was like, they don't give up hope this up and coming year, and that's what the GM and the team is supposed to do anyway. So they got to figure it out. The Pelicans, 26-56. They played a lot of their young players more minutes. They allowed them to, practice some things and try to do it on the court at the NBA level and in the NBA games. And that's all you can really do. Try to let them develop, let them grow, let them get better. Their defense wasn't good. A lot of their young players wasn't that great, but they showed signs, they showed progress, and that's all you can really ask for from them. Zion looked it good, but not dominant, and him playing a lot more games this year and them not winning that much was something that you probably wouldn't expect. They couldn't even win 30 games this year. A lot of their other guys they took gamble on, like Jordan Poole and those guys, didn't perform at the level that they thought. They was able to get DeJounte Murray back. He ended up looking decent, considering how bad the injury was that he ended up suffering, which was the Achilles. He ended up looking decent. They had other guys like Fears and Queen play some quality minutes and try to help them develop as much as they could throughout their first season. And then, Sadiq Bey ended up being real good for them all season. So they had a season where a lot of guys showed what they can do, but they couldn't really win as a team. 31 percentage is what they had when it comes to wins. 38 games behind the Thunder for the number one spot. 17-24 at home, 9-32 on the road, 7-9 in the division, 17-34 in the conference, a minus 4.5 in differential. Lost their last two and finished 1-9 in the last 10. They really had hard times winning games. The Mavericks, they got rid of Anthony Davis and said, we're going to get a ball to Cooper. We're going to let him make plays. We're going to let him take shots. And we're just going to live with him doing that because that's what this franchise is going to be doing in the future with him on the roster, especially if he's healthy for a long part of the season. And then it's just about getting the right supporting cast around him and the right players around him to, compliment him and allow him to be the player that we know he can be. But other than that, it wasn't that much they can do this year, but try to find a way to get more future so they can put young talent around Cooper, who's only a teenager still. But they finished 26-56, and they had a 31 win percentage as well. 38 games behind the Thunder, 16-25 on at home, 10-30 on the road, 4-12 in the division, 14-37 in the conference, minus 5.5 in differential. They won their last game. They finished 3-7 in their last 10. They just have to figure out how to win with Cooper, how to put the right team around them. This season they didn't have that. This season they didn't come in thinking that they will be in a situation they ended up being in. But things changed, things happened, they shook things up, and now they just have to find a way to put the talent together in the in off season and in the draft and see if they can develop guys that have upside and have good instincts and good NBA ready skill sets to help be better than they were this year, next year. And the season that they had, they weren't the greatest offensive team or the greatest defensive team, which means they was gonna get a lot of losses for that reason. And then the Grizzlies, they lost Jaren Jackson and John Morant didn't play. They got rid of Desmond Bain. So, and then Zach Edey was injured all year, so you knew they was gonna have a tough time winning games, which they did. 25 wins, 57 losses, 30 win percentage, 39 games behind the Thunder, 13-27 at home, 11-29 on the road, 6-10 in the division, 19-33 in the conference, a minus 6.0 in differential. They lost their last 8 and finished 1-9 in their last 10. Sacramento Kings competed. They played hard. They tried to win games. They also tried to blow them. We knew they wasn't going to be the greatest defensive team, but we didn't know they was going to have as many injuries that they ended up sustaining throughout the season and even at the end of the season. And then they thought we might as well just go ahead and prepare for next year. 22-60 in their this season, 26 win percentage, 42 games behind. The Thunder 15-26 at home, 7-34 on the road, 4-12 in the division, 14-38 in the conference, a minus 10 in point in differential. They lost their last game and finished 3-7 in their last 10. And then the Utah Jazz, the last team, they also finished 22-60. They had a lot of guys out. Walker Kessler was out for the season. Jaren Jackson had surgery. Lauri Markkanen was out for the season. And then it just kept going on and on with other players. They could never really get their team together. They could never really put their team out on the court for a long period of time. And we're going to be able to hopefully see them healthier next year for them to show us what they really are going to look like and what they're really going to be, and see if they can speed up their rebuild. They're going to add more young talent to this roster, and they also are going to have to pay some people. But other than that, they was terrible defensively. They was inconsistent offensively. They had inconsistent lineups. They didn't know who they was going to play, who they was going to have every single game, who was going to start. And if you're going to have those type of problems and you're going to have those type of situations happen basically every single game, you're going to lose a lot just for that. And they did. 22-60, 26 win percentage, 42 games behind the Thunder, 14-27 at home, 8-33 on the road, 1-15 in division. That's just terrible. And 12-40 in the conference, a minus 8.4 in differential. They lost their last game, and they finished 1-9 in their last 10. They could not win games at all. And then it's just about let us get our young players out there, let them play, let them develop, let them get better at the game, let them try some things out. That's the best way we can end our season, is by showing them that we invested in them. We like what they can do. We like what they can be. And since our season is basically over, we don't really have nothing to lose, because we want them to grow and develop and be great players in the future. So this is just a stepping stone and a milestone that we're going to have to try to achieve, is by being healthy as we can with these players and try to make them better and as good as we can for next season and even in the future. Other than that, thank y'all for watching. Thank y'all for checking out the rundown and supporting the channel. Other than that, comment, like, subscribe, share, hit the notification bell to get the analysis when it first come out. Y'all stay blessed up. Y'all stay good. Peace. And I'll see y'all later today, hopefully with more analysis if it's needed.